This video was made possible by you. If you want to save time and support what I do, check the link in the description that will take you to my store where you can purchase the source file for what we're creating in this video, as well as other tutorials on my channel. Thank you for your support, and let's get back to the video. Welcome back to designing a website in Figma. 2 episodes back, we completed an audit and cleanup of this source file. And as you can see, this is the result. We have a nice little design system section on the left and the designs on the right. It's now way easier to navigate. And in the last episode, we focused on fixing our drop-down menu so that now it actually works and behaves similar to what you'd actually expect in a drop-down menu, which means it's closing when you hover outside of the menu. And in this video, I thought we might try and build a nested drop-down menu, meaning after hovering on one of those elements, what if we got another drop-down menu? I'm actually not sure if we're going to be able to build this in Figma, but let's try and let's see where this takes us. Now, the great thing about this is, as you can see, we are defining all these interactions, or if you watched the last episode, you remembered that we were focusing on setting up the interactions in this area. But thanks to the fact that this is a component, and this component is now as a header menu placed on all these pages, we get the possibility of navigating to this drop-down menu from any page. So hopefully if we build this nested drop-down menu, we can also use that on all of our pages, which is the goal. So the first step in this process would be thinking about the new structure of this drop-down menu. I think we could expand this one, meaning we're going to choose one of those elements that are going to reveal another menu. So I would say that, let's say that the press drop-down menu item is going to lead to 2 additional items, which would be, let me actually duplicate this, right? Let me duplicate this drop-down. That could be press releases, and then it could be brand assets, right? So for the press, you have press releases, and when they want to, for example, download the logos and so on. And I'm going to remove the last item. I'm also going to remove this, and then I'm going to make sure the rounding on this element is uniform. So it's going to be 20 on the top left corner as well. All right, now we need to signal somehow that this item has something, contains something in it. We are using this little arrow on the drop down in the main header menu. So we need to use something similar here. And what we need to do is basically using this, right? So we're using components here. So if I just click on this and then go to the component, you can see it leads me to this default dropdown. And when we hover over this default dropdown menu item, we're going to get to this one, which means you get this hover effect where, you know, this interaction where if you hover over these items, you get an arrow. But we need the arrow to be there before we even click it in this case. So I'm just going to copy this over here inside of this component. And to match the color, I'm just going to go for 50% opacity on the stroke so that it goes nicely together. But what happens now is we're going to get the arrows on all of these, but we do not want that. That is not our goal. Our goal is to have this arrow just on the press one. So I am going to go back here, and then I'm going to select the arrow, and under appearance, I'm going to connect this to a property. And the reason I'm doing that is after we finish this, we're going to be able to enable and disable the arrow on our instance of this component. So just take a look. I'm going to click add variable property, and I'm going to go over here to plus, and I'm going to select property, and the name would be arrow, create. And now if I go back to the instance, which is here at the very bottom, and select the component, I can now disable the arrow. Yeah. So I can just keep it here. So if I take a look now to the header menu, you can see that only press has this arrow. Awesome. Let's take a look at what the functionality is here actually. How do we show this drop down? It's through the mouse enter interaction. As you can see, mouse enter triggers an open overlay event, and the overlay is this. So there's gonna be something similar happening here if we make it work, yeah? First of all, we need to actually disconnect this from the press page. We're gonna have to create another page, probably. So I'm just gonna connect this to the dropdown. And I'm going to say that on mouse enter, the action is going to be open overlay. Yeah, you can see that it's already being shown here. And let me position this to the actual position we'd like to see. So I think here, probably something like that. Yeah, we'll see what that looks like later. But at the same time, so first let's test this. Let's test this. And you can see that it doesn't work. So as soon as I hover over the press button, it disappears. I suspect that this has something to do with this interaction, which is mouse leave is going to close the overlay. So what if we disable this, right? What if we actually delete this? Let's delete this interaction. What happens now? All right, this is looking better, but it's looking stuck now. So let's reset this. And there is some kind of a issue. So let's just relaunch the prototype. Let's hide the UI. And let's see. All right, so for some reason, you can see that it works, which is great. However, you don't get the hover effect here. And again, I am suspecting that this has something to do with the multi-level overlays situation. So I think this could be fixed by actually duplicating this. Let's again duplicate this. And I'm just going to rename this to resources dropdown underscore press. And what I'm thinking here is, instead of actually adding another level to the overlay logic, we could simply swap the overlay. And we're going to swap it for a version of this dropdown, which is going to additionally contain this as well, right? So let me just show you what I mean. I'm going to do Command X, resources dropdown, Command V. And I am going to go to absolute position or ignore auto layout so that we can position this freely. And I'm going to move it here, okay? I'm going to align it to the top, or probably like this. I'm not sure what's the distance, 3 more pixels. Okay. And what is happening now is that basically this is another state of this dropdown. However, it's not a state because this is not a component. It's a different type of overlay. So I'm going to go back to this element, and I'm going to go to prototype, and I will select this item again and add an interaction. I'm going to add an interaction, and this interaction is going to be mouse enter, and the action is going to be swap overlay. And the overlay is going to be resources dropdown underscore press, okay? Swap overlay. Now we're going to test, reset and test and see what happens. All right, so as you can see, now it works perfectly. Not only we get this over here, but there's also the hover state. Now there are 2 issues that we probably need to fix. So if you take a look now, first of all, if I hover here and then hover back somewhere else, I am not disabling this menu, which doesn't make sense because that's not how drop-downs behave. At the same time, if I move my mouse over here and then go back, the whole thing closes. That's such an unexpected behavior that we need to fix that. So let me actually add another interaction, which probably is going to be on this one. And I'm gonna, in the resources dropdown underscore press, I'm gonna add another interaction, and then I'm going to do mouse leave actually. So if we get mouse leave, the action is going to be swap overlay, and the overlay is going to be resources drop down. Now, there might be one potential issue. If I do this, this also means that if you hover over this and then you go to select one of those elements, that might count as mouse leave. But if this doesn't work, I do have one workaround in mind. So let's see first. Let's see what that looks like. Reset. Yeah, and this is what I was talking about. So as you can see, if I hover over this element and then hover back, yes, it closes. That's the expected behavior. But when I try to move my mouse and hover over press releases, it closes. That's definitely not the expected behavior. So let's think about this. I think we could try and put this interaction onto this element instead of this one. Let's try that. I'm going to remove this mouse leave interaction, select this, and then connect this element to this frame. Okay, this frame. And the interaction is going to be mouse. Wait, we're going to have to approach this differently. Okay, we actually cannot do that because the mouse overlay, I didn't notice this, the mouse overlay interactions, the mouse leave interaction, sorry, close overlay interaction is already present here. Let's see what happens if we remove this actually. Let's remove this. And let's use mouse leave, action swap overlay, and it's going to be resources drop down. What happens now? Let's see. Now this doesn't work because this is what happens, yeah? When I go to press and do this, that's expected. But when my mouse leaves this area, it closes. That's excellent. But at the same time, if I hover again on this press drop down, it's going to open it again. So effectively what's going to happen is this. I open the drop down, I open the second drop down, hover here, and then I want to go back. I want to close this. It's going to close that and then immediately open again. And then it doesn't work. So I think we need to again approach this differently. I think we actually have to do not mouse leave on this element, but mouse enter on these two. So if we add another interaction on this one and do mouse enter, we're gonna do swap overlay here for the resources drop down, and the same thing is gonna happen here. So mouse enter, action swap overlay, resources drop down. And now let's see what's gonna happen. Okay, let's reset resources. And now this is excellent. This works way better. So as you can see, if I hover over these elements, then go back and I go to hover over case studies, it closes the initial open drop down, which is press, which is exactly the expected behavior. We're having some smart animate interaction, but I'm gonna just keep it at instant to simplify for now. So I'm gonna just disable this or change this to instant. And now let's take a look again. Yeah, and this is the expected behavior. What I would also like to see that if my mouse leaves this area, I would like this to close, right? This is weird. So let's just select this entire drop down. Let's change the size actually. Or no, let's not change the size. Let's put an invisible frame inside of this drop down. So I'm gonna do frame like that. Command X, select this drop down, and Command V, and then absolute position. I'm just gonna do a very prominent color for now, just so I can see where we position this. And I'm thinking if I just align it like this, and then like that, and if I define that, if I put an interaction on this frame, that's going to be, which is going to be at the very bottom, the frame is going to be at the very bottom. And I'm going to do mouse leave on this element, mouse leave, action swap overlay, and it's going to be resources drop down. Is this going to help? Let's see. All right, so swap overlay. And yeah, it appears to be working, as you can see. Yeah? If I leave this magenta area, it's gonna close, okay? So that's pretty nice. We could also do one more thing, which would be that we're gonna reuse this logic again in our initial dropdown. And now this is getting pretty complex. So if you wanna save time and support the channel, definitely check the link in the description where you can buy the source file for this, all of this, and the menu that we are creating right now. So I'm going to copy this. Let's just call this focus area or something. I'm gonna copy this, paste it here, yeah. However, I'm gonna make it rather small. And I am going to, again, go to prototype and do an interaction on this item only, yeah, on this item. And this item is going to have the following interaction. Mouse, wait, we need to first close all interactions. So focus area is gonna have mouse leave interaction, and the action is going to be close overlay. So let's test this again. Reset, resources. And we are having our first issue. If we now hover over the press menu, for some reason Figma considers this to be leaving this area. So I'm just going to remove this from here, or rather remove the interaction. Let's just remove the interaction, right? So now it works properly. But at the same time, we don't get this interaction where if you leave this area, it's going to close. So why don't we try and put this on the actual drop down itself? So instead of the focus area, let's click on this again. Let's do mouse leave and let's do close overlay. Is this going to help in any way? I think we're gonna oh, it actually works. Okay. I don't know why I didn't expect this to work, but yeah. So let's summarize this. When I hover over this element, we're going to get 3 of these, where one of them is going to take us to, is going to swap the overlay. We can then hover over this. When we go back to the initial menu, we can still go back and forth like this. However, as soon as we hover over one of these elements, it's going to swap the overlay again. And then if we leave this area, it's going to close the drop-down menu altogether. So I think this is pretty good. I think this is the behavior you would expect from a multi-level drop-down. However, there is one caveat. If I hover over these elements in the second level, then hover outside, it's going to swap the overlay. But it's going to be still open. This resources menu is still going to be open. So to close this, I have to hover again over one of these elements and then outside, and then it's going to close. So that's one limitation, but I think this is a very minor thing, and I think I'm happy with this result. So I'm going to keep it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to make this focus area completely transparent. So let's go to 0 on the opacity, right? So now it's looking completely natural. That's pretty great. It's pretty nice. And at the same time, I'm going to probably go to the drop shadow, because you can see we have this edge happening here. So I'm just going to go to drop shadow and click on show behind transparent areas. All right. I'm going to disable this shadow as well, because we got a double shadow. We don't want that. And what I'm going to do is the following. I am going to add another page, which is going to be, instead of press, this is going to be press releases. So press releases, and then it is going to be brand assets. So let's see, because we got some new items. So brand assets, and we also have to go here and then navigate to press releases. No, that's going to go here. And then this one is going to lead here as well. All right. Now take a look. Resources, press releases, brand assets, press releases. Okay. So we have a mistake here. It's going to brand assets. This should go to press releases. Let's see again. Press releases. Yep. Brand assets. Excellent. And one last thing, I'm going to probably do some cosmetic changes, which is going to be disabling the icon on this. And then let's do a tiny little space, like two pixels. Yeah. And as I mentioned, it's because we're using a component. This is now going to be on all the pages. We're going to be able to use this navigation from anywhere. And every time it's going to take us back to brand assets and press releases. All right, so this is pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with this result. If you found this useful, please leave a like. Go and check out the link in the description to get the source file for this. And I will see you in the next one.